Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Meet Princess, who is poorly today, so she wants some comfort and love, and I'm going to give it her even though I'm recording, which is why she's going to be my little helper today, so yeah. So this video is part of my Christmas week videos, as you can tell. I've found cases that occurred around Christmas, and a holiday that's supposed to be full of joy, happiness, light, can sometimes end in darkness. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the murder of Sameena Imam. I'd just like to, I mean no disrespect to anyone I'm going to talk about. I've gathered this information off the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. Sameena Imam was a 34-year-old woman who lived in Cardiff in the United Kingdom. She was a regional marketing manager at Costco stores, and she would travel across a few different stores and do her work there. On average, she had a very good wage and she was really doing well for herself. She was this busy, successful woman who absolutely loved life. She loved spending time with family, with friends. She was described by her sister as being really bright, selfless, kind and outgoing. She was a wonderful mentor to her brother during some difficult times that he had. So even though all this was known about her, there was another side to her that her family didn't really know about. It was a secret that she'd been keeping for the last 2 years, and it was because it could jeopardize her job. So Costco had these strict rules against kind of employee relationships and obviously dating co-workers, and that's exactly what Sameena was doing. She was dating 41-year-old Roger Cooper, who was a warehouse manager at the Costco Coventry store. Like I said, she travelled across different stores, and Coventry was one of those included, and that's where she met him. They obviously sparked up the relationship, and it carried on from there. There was another problem with this relationship though, because Roger had a long-time girlfriend who he had been going out with for a very long time. Her name was Susan Potts. So basically, not only did Sameena have to keep their relationship stum at work, obviously it would risk the job, they had to do that, it was very important, and she would also have to keep it quiet outside because he had a girlfriend and he didn't want her finding out, so she couldn't really tell many of her friends or make it very public or anything like that. The only people that she did actually tell were very close friends that she kind of knew would keep the secret and it wouldn't get out. So she was living, in a sense, like this secret life on kind of the backhand. Sameena was under the impression that Roger was going to break up with his girlfriend. That's what he told her, that's what she believed. And then obviously she could lead less of this secret relationship life because she was able to then tell her friends and things like that. Obviously she'd still have to keep it away from her work because she would probably get fired, but it wasn't that big of a deal in that sense. So she was just really looking forward to him obviously breaking it off with his girlfriend so that he could be with her and they could finally be together properly. I believe it was her Christmas wish to be able to tell people that they were a couple finally, and unfortunately she never got that Christmas wish. As I said, there were a few very, very close friends that knew about Roger. She told him that he was going to end his relationship with late November and obviously be with her. There are also text messages that corroborate this, and then it was supposed to start with a Christmas getaway for the pair of them. Sameena went on to book a 2-night hotel stay in Malmaison Hotel in Birmingham in 2014. And this would have been their first Christmas as an official couple. And she was really excited. The hotel was lovely. They had these really, really stylish rooms at the time. Obviously, I don't know what they look like now, but they were pretty unique looking, and she spent a lot of money on it, not including food. I believe that it cost her £500 just for the 2 nights. And the food was quite lavish and expensive, so she was willing to spend quite a decent amount of money on this lovely time away together. It was on the 24th of December in 2014, which was when the pair was supposed to meet and go to the hotel later on. Sameena is caught on CCTV footage in Marks and Spencer's buying a bottle of Bellini, which is an alcohol, some chocolate, some sweets, most likely for their night at the hotel. This was all done on a lunch break. At 4 p.m, at Costco's store in Coventry, the cameras catch Roger and Sameena leaving within a few seconds of each other, but separately. So they got into the separate cars. She got into a BMW and he got into his Audi. That would be the last time Sameena was caught on CCTV. She spoke to her sister a little later on. On the phone, she told her that she would be coming over to the family house on Boxing Day to her parents' house, who lived in Essex, and she would be joining the festivities in that way. Little did her sister know, or even Sameena for that fact, that that would be the last time that they ever spoke again. Obviously, on Boxing Day, when she didn't turn up at her parents' house, everyone began to worry. They tried to call her, she didn't answer, and so, panicked, they called the police and reported her as missing. It was very unusual for Sameena. She'd said she was going to be there. She was going to spend Boxing Day with her family, her parents. And for her to not contact them and tell them otherwise, it was very out of character. So that is why they were very worried. This would turn into a massive investigation, which was led by Caroline March. She was a senior investigating officer. After a week passes by, they begin to worry that they may not find her safe and well. They want to obviously find her as soon as possible to get the best outcome, and time was ticking on and she was still nowhere to be seen. That was when her friends came forward on the 31st of December to tell them about this secret affair that they didn't have a clue about. So of course the police then go to speak to Roger. As you probably know by now, most cases of missing people are the people closest to them, their boyfriend, their husband, family members, friends. It's usually them, and that is the sad aspect of it, but it's the truth. Roger cooperated with the police completely. He said to them that he and Sameena had actually broken up just before Christmas, a few days before, because for one, he didn't want to lose his job, and for two, he didn't want to lose Susan, his longtime girlfriend, and so he broke it off with her and he felt relieved about it. He said that she didn't take it very well though. She kept sort of bombarding him with all these texts, and she kept sending him these messages trying to convince him to still go to the hotel. And he kind of makes her out like to be some sort of stalker or something. Due to him being so cooperative and forthcoming, the police don't really think that he's too much of a suspect and begin looking elsewhere. It didn't take long though to put the suspicion back on Roger, because as they started digging deeper into it, they quickly realised that, well, all of her closest friends that pretty much knew everything about her life didn't know that their relationship was on the rocks, didn't know that they were splitting up. They didn't have a clue about anything like that, because in their eyes, the relationship that they had was very, very strong. As far as they were all aware, they were still going on this trip, which is what Sameena believed. So because of this, they begin looking back into Roger and they start interviewing Costco workforce. And this is when they find out something else about Roger. He also has another girlfriend that works at Costco that nobody knew about. So literally this one man had 3 women on the go all at once. This affair had only begun within the last 6 months, and it was with a girl called Sinead Sweeney. I did notice that there was an odd coincidence of all the women's names beginning with S, which I did find a bit weird, but again, just a coincidence. I highly doubt he just goes for people with the name beginning with S. You never know though. As they interviewed Sinead, she kind of told them about this dark side to Roger that she'd seen that nobody else really seemed to have seen. He told her not to cross him and that he was a dangerous man when backed into a corner. As more evidence came out, it became clear that Sameena didn't have a clue about Sinead. And Sinead was actually estranged from her husband. So as you can see, there's just so many people involved in this one big mess of relationships. On the 1st of January 2015, the police did their first official interview with Roger.
The last day you saw it?
It was around 4 p.m, but I haven't got that specific time, so it's around 4 p.m.
Yeah.
So I went over there and gave her a hug. So I'll talk to you later, and then I left.
Now, watching this, I really didn't get it. So this man is broken up with her. He has no remorse over that, and he is like devastated. He's so upset that she is missing. Please don't get me wrong, I'm obviously not going to say that he should be happy that she's gone. Of course not. I'm just saying that for a man that didn't want her in his life, there's a lot of crying over someone that he didn't really care about.
Okay, she's phoned you. What did you say?
She's saying that, so I'll see you tonight then. Like, no, I'm not going to be there. She's just trying to persuade me one more time.
What happened then?
It was a 2-minute conversation, if that. It was a brief one.
You said the call lasted about 2 minutes.
If that.
The video, to me at least, seems forced and pretty false. When asked about where he thought she was, he came back with, she's probably on holiday with her friends. Now, I just don't get that, because he is literally on the camera crying his eyes out, but he believes that she's on holiday with her friends. Well, why are you crying? Why are you so upset if she's not even missing? If she's gone away and she is fine, why are you crying on the camera? It's just very weird. And not only that, her friends or her family couldn't get hold of her. If she was on holiday, she'd answer the phone. She would get in touch with someone. Someone would know where she is, and they just didn't. So it was very suspicious, and the police thought the story was false too. The police brought him straight back into the station once more for questioning again. This time he brought his lawyer, which obviously is a very advisable thing to do. Everyone deserves to have a lawyer. Sometimes, as bad as it sounds, evidence can be pinned on people, and our confessions can be forced or sort of pried out of someone when they didn't even do it. So you should always have a lawyer. They ask him for his alibi. He states that he left work around 4 p.m. and that was when he went to his brother's house in Leicester to collect a Christmas present. His brother was 39-year-old David Cooper. The Christmas present that he was going to get was a Star Wars figurine, and the pair were very passionate about Star Wars. They were very big fans. That was when he said he returned home to Susan, and he stayed there for the next few days. They obviously wanted to confirm this alibi, so they brought in his brother David. David used to be a reservist in the army, and now he ran a cafe, and he also worked as a doorman on the side. During the interview, he does manage to identify Sameena, but nothing much else really. He basically says that he didn't even know her name, which is obscure because Roger's been dating her on the side for 2 years. The police got the first break in the case when they found Sameena's car around 65 miles away from Coventry. Now, the car is a bit of a strange one because as they start looking through it, they kind of start really believing that Sameena was a victim of foul play, because inside the car, there was not one fingerprint. So it's so obscure because you're driving the car. So Sameena would have had her hands on the wheel, maybe wound the window down, the gear stick, anything, the car handles as she got out. She literally, her prints should have been all over the car, and guess what? They weren't. There was not one print in that car. Not hers, not anyone's. So that leads you to believe immediately that the car's been wiped clean. Not only that, it was realised later on that Sameena was 5'2", and she was quite a small girl. I myself am 5 foot, and when I have to drive a car, I am literally sat on top of the wheel because my legs are too short to reach the pedals. So I literally have to sit pretty much on top of the wheel to reach them, and so did she. So her seat needed to be really close so that she could reach these pedals. When they opened the car and they took all the pictures, the seat was pushed quite far back, as if somebody else had been driving it. Now, of course, she could have done something like pulled the seat back, maybe dropped something underneath it, pulled it back, got out and forgot about it, but why were there no fingerprints in the car? Seriously. The police now thinking that they were looking for a body brought in specialist, and they were to check her phone records, her GPS tracking and things like that. This was so that they could try and find out where the car had been and what had actually happened that Christmas Eve. It was around 4 till 7 p.m. when her phone was active. Her final text to Roger going through around 7 p.m. It said something along the lines of, "I'm going to where I'm loved the most." So it looked like it had been sent in anger and frustration, probably because if his story was right, that he had dumped her and that's what she sent after. The phone then tracked from Costco stores up to Leicester. So she never went to the hotel in Birmingham. They also tracked another phone that was travelling to Leicester at the same time. And if you remember, whose brother also lives in Leicester? You got it, Roger's brother. It could seem likely that the pair drove in separate cars because they were last seen, obviously, in their separate cars. Although, on the other hand, they could have joined up at some point, got into the one car and drove to David's house. The records also showed that they arrived there at the exact same time at 5 p.m. Now, Roger was trying to make her out as like this stalker, so maybe she had gotten in her car and maybe she'd followed him up to his brother's. Maybe she was a little obsessed and then after that she left. And that's why she didn't text him in anger until 7 p.m. Strangely enough, as soon as she arrived at David's, her phone was switched off until over an hour later at 6:25 p.m. when it was turned back on and both phones left David's house. And they headed towards Coventry. At some point, both phones get turned off again. Then 1 minute later, Sameena's is turned back on. That was when the text message was sent to Roger's phone and then it was quickly turned back off again. And I don't get why these phones keep being turned off and on all the time. And why Sameena's phone was heading in the same direction as Roger's house when he lived there with his girlfriend Susan. This was when the analysts found that there was actually some deleted text on Roger's phone. And funnily enough, how I said that she had bombarded him with all these messages, well, Roger just made it look like that, because Sameena would send a text message, Roger would reply, and then Sameena would send another text message, Roger would reply, and so on. Now, Roger on his phone deleted his replies. So, to somebody just peering at his phone and not really looking too much into it, he's got a load of messages off Sameena with him ignoring them and no responses off him, looking like she's just bombarded him with messages when she hasn't. He's been replying to them all along. So by this point, the police are really suspicious of Roger, but they don't have any evidence against him. So they decide to bring in David's girlfriend, Mina. She was asked if she'd been to David's on Christmas Eve, which she replied yes, but she hadn't seen Sameena, and when she actually went, it was around 7:45. She said that she didn't see anything unusual, she stayed in the middle room, and that was it. She didn't really go anywhere else, and you'll find out why she couldn't really go anywhere else a little bit later on. She stayed for 15 minutes and then she left. Don't really know why she only stayed 15 minutes. Maybe they were just exchanging gifts, maybe she were busy and she wanted to nip in and see him, I don't know. They were still looking into the phones, and this is when they come across these very strange Star Wars messages. Now, as I said before, the brothers were very into Star Wars. These messages were from an unidentified number and they were sent in early December. So, as I said, they were interested in Star Wars. They could have just been some sort of, I don't know, coded messages or just some chatter with friends. But they definitely were not that, and this case just begins to get stranger. So this is where the police, obviously desperate to try and get anything, were looking at sort of cameras that catch license plates. And this is when, on Christmas Eve, they find Roger's car driving around, but not Sameena's. And this meant that she must have been in Roger's car. At this point, Sameena's friends really came forward, and they began connecting the case for the police. They said that Sameena had confided in them that she had been threatening Roger with kind of an ultimatum that he needed to leave Susan, and that if he didn't, she would expose them. Now, Roger was most likely worried about that. Obviously, it was his job and his longtime girlfriend, which he said that he was going to break up with, so clearly he wasn't. But this gave him a motive to murder Sameena. Now, as they looked deeper into it, they did eventually find Sameena's car on the traffic cameras, but they weren't where her phone was. They weren't in the same location, and they couldn't tell who was driving Sameena's car. Roger was at his house according to his girlfriend in his alibi, which she backed up. And so was his phone when they looked into it. So, who do you think was driving Sameena's car? Well, guess whose phone was turned off on the 27th of December when Sameena's car was driving around and was taken to that street where it would not be moved again until the police found it? David's phone. And that gave David the link to Sameena, but there was still no motive for David. There was a motive for Roger. She was threatening him. He was worried, and so he could have gotten rid of her, but why David? Why did David do it? The police go on to get a warrant to search David's house, and they also get a warrant for the arrest of David and Roger on suspicion of murder. And at this point, they haven't even found a body. Now, as I said before, you'll find out why she stayed in the middle room alone. As they searched David's apartment, they realised that he was a hoarder. Now his rooms were filled from top to bottom with all this stuff that he's collected over the years. There was just sort of very little room to move, sort of maybe only just live, like a little space in the kitchen to cook, a little space to sleep, things like that. So it was just cram-packed, but they didn't find any blood. They didn't find any sign of a struggle or anything like that. What they did find, though, was a huge downfall on David's part. He was a hoarder, and in his fridge was the bottle of Bellini that Sameena had bought. In his cupboards were her chocolates and sweets that she'd purchased on Christmas Eve on her lunchtime. This was the all-essential link from David to Sameena. They also found some of her personal belongings in his rooms, and in being this hoarder made it very difficult for him to throw anything away, which was very, very helpful to the police. They found in his pocket a train ticket, and this train ticket was from Coventry back down to Leicester, and it was where Sameena's car had been dropped off. The train station wasn't that far away from there. back to Leicester, where David lived. So, yeah, that really didn't work out very well for him. Of course, the police question him again, and he goes on to say about the last time that he saw Sameena. Let me just say this was his first official confession, and well, yeah, it's very strange. You just need to listen to it. The entire thing was about 10 minutes long, so I'm obviously not going to put the entire thing in, but I've just tried to pick out kind of the most important parts.
Lady, I didn't know her name. She died on my sofa.
This lady died on my sofa. Okay. He said that Roger came and then left like not long after, and a minute later he hears a knock at the door and he opened it, but normally he wouldn't because, and I quote it, he doesn't like people. So he answers the door and it's Sameena. She's looking for Roger. So she just walks in and is like, where's Roger? He tells her to sit down. Apparently she's very kind of up and shouting and things like that. So he tells her to sit down. He'll call Roger, which he stated that he had no intentions of doing. Right, so this 5'2" woman barged into his house with her waving her Bellini around, waving her chocolates and sweets, demanding to see his brother, and this 6'7" guy cannot physically get her out of the house. So you can't, like, I don't know, if you were that desperate, pick her up and take her outside. You cannot just kind of gently coax her outside. She's that erratic and that, I don't know, strong that you can't get her out. Yeah, okay, David, that is very, very believable. Or even if you didn't want to lay hands on her, you know, some people don't want to obviously put their hands on a woman. Understandable. You couldn't have called the police. But what he did next was just unbelievable and it blew my mind. You've got to listen to this.
I collect lots of different odds and pieces. In my house you'll find lots of things, and they found lots of things, and none of it makes sense to lots of people, but to me it's interesting. And so in my kitchen I've got an ammo box, a military ammo tin, which I think is normal, and in that I had a pot of chloroform.
Yeah, David, you got that right. I don't understand why you've got chloroform in your kitchen. I don't think anyone would, to be quite honest. Okay, you collect odd bits and bats, but chloroform, if you don't know, is what sometimes you see in films. So when they want to knock someone unconscious and they put the liquid on the rag and then they shove it over the nose, it knocks someone unconscious. And he just has this lying in his kitchen in this tin. Okay. It's totally normal.
I thought I'll just shut her up because my walls are paper thin. I don't want a scene.
It just gets better. Seriously, your walls are paper thin. This erratic woman needed to be silenced. Of course she did. So your theory was to chloroform her.
I got the chlorophyll, I poured it over a tea towel, and my sofa is right next to the doorway, and I just went in and put it across her face thinking that it would come out. And as stupid and naive as it sounds, I did think that it would just buy me some time.
Once more, you couldn't just call the police. Or even, hell, just pick her up and put her outside. No, you needed to use that chloroform on her, definitely. Then, well, she just didn't wake up. So the chloroform had killed her. Well, I just thought that it was mainly used to just knock people out.
And I tried. You know what I mean? I felt for pulse. And I've only seen it on TV and it sounds so stupid. I'm nearly 40 years old and I was like,
So anyway, he goes on to say that he quickly realised that no one knew she was there. And how it was like fate that the car was there. And how he just drove it to Coventry and left it. And that no one would ever know. It was like fate that a woman you just accidentally killed had left the car not that far away. It wasn't lucky for poor Sameena, who was lying dead on your sofa at home. This man was just really disturbed, and I don't think there's any other way to describe him.
Then I had to so I got back home. Now I've got this thing to hide. Sorry, I'm not going to refer to it as anything.
You sure? Okay.
So I know a guy, everyone knows people. He's a bit of an idiot and he's got a van.
First of all, he's referring to it as this thing he had to take care of. It's just utterly unbelievable. He then goes on to say about this friend that he has that has a van. This friend really wanted to impress David, and so he called his friend Ben to dispose of her body. Of course, the number he rang him on was this disposable phone. He no longer had his number because he also threw away the piece of paper that his number was on, and he no longer had this phone. So he couldn't give them Ben's number. And then Ben just came round, and he was so wanting to impress David that, yeah, I'll just take this woman's body and bury her for you, no problem. He then stated that he didn't know what Ben did with her body after that, and therefore he doesn't know where her body is. He then obviously moved her car, and he took the train back home, and he even stated that if it was 10 years ago, he would have got away with it. But oh, sorry, no, there's cameras now, so damn, that's obviously why I got caught. That story's just totally insane. This guy has clearly lost some marbles along the way, because this elaborate, insane story wasn't even the truth, and her death was very far from an accident. On the 9th of January, the brothers were charged with murder. David's girlfriend also came forward to say that she had been asked to dig up these weeds on his allotment. And on the 11th of January, David's friends come forward to say that they have the keys for this other property that he owns, which is the allotment. This was on Grove Road in Leicester. So it has this shed on it, and it's got land around it, and normally people would use it to grow veggies and things like that. Forensics go to this plot of land, and they begin digging. The team work on the site for 5 days before they find something. On the 16th of January, in a very, very deep grave, they find Sameena's body. She was very far down, below this tarp, wrapped in a towel, put in an army-issue sleeping bag, wrapped in a plastic bag, and then, for good measure, wrapped in cling film. And the police actually found this ironic sign within the shed. Now, I don't know whether David even really thought about it whilst he was burying her body, but this sign actually said, "Don't wind me up, I'm running out of places to hide the body." So it's just a very ironic sign. At the trial, the reasoning behind this murder came to light. It wasn't a spur of the moment thing, it wasn't an accident. They'd been planning this murder for weeks and weeks, and they'd also tried before to kill Sameena, made an attempt on her life previously. Her cause of death was actually classed as very, very odd. And at this point, I'm sure it's clear to everyone that Roger wanted to get rid of Sameena. They looked into computers and things in early December, and they found that David had purchased chloroform off eBay. He bought 200 mils on the 8th of December for £12. Now, I don't understand how anyone could buy anything like that, but he did. Also, David would go on to say that that never arrived. The chloroform that I said I had in my kitchen, I lied about that. I didn't have any chloroform in my kitchen because it never came. Okay. Even though he confessed on the tapes to accidentally killing Sameena, he's now denying it all. While searching through his hoard of belongings at his house, they find a disposable mobile phone, which contained the Star Wars coded messages I mentioned earlier. Remember those? I honestly do really believe that part of him getting caught was him being a hoarder. He literally kept all this vital evidence that would go against him just in his house, in his pocket, everywhere. Not that obviously that's a bad thing. He committed a crime and you want him to get caught. Of course you do. But you know what I mean. So they used these phrases in Star Wars code between Roger and David, and it was to hide the murder plot against Sameena. So they said things like Death Star complete, stay on target, and you are expected, Vader. It was suggested that obviously these men knew what it meant. They sort of pre-talked about it, but actually electronically they wanted to keep it in code, in Star Wars code. And it was thought that they were letting each other know how their mission had got on that day. Their first attempt on Sameena's life was planned for the early hours of the 12th of December in 2014. Sameena was a regular guest at Solihull's Premier Inn, and that night, following a Christmas party, she had planned to sleep there. Roger had told Sameena to meet him at the hotel there, where he claimed that he'd booked this surprise room for her. The surprise was that no room had been booked. Roger wasn't going to be there. Meanwhile, David sat outside in the car park in a hire car, ready and waiting to abduct Sameena. And that was why the brothers communicated using the Star Wars code. It was in relation to that. The plan failed. It was said that Sameena's taxi pulled really close to the door and she just walked into the hotel into safety. David didn't really get a chance to actually take her. David then proceeded to send a text to his brother in broken French. And it translated to, "There's no point, no score, the window is closed." Pretty much telling him that obviously it had failed, the plan had failed. The autopsy did find a bizarre combination of poisonous metals in a system. This included antimony, cadmium, tin, mercury and arsenic. It's also thought to have been administered to Sameena in liquid form, so I don't know whether they forced it down her throat, they injected her, I don't know. But it turned out that her actual cause of death was due to chloroform toxicity. And that's quite an obscure way to murder someone. The poisonous metals didn't cause the death on their own. I don't know whether that in combination with the chloroform was what actually sort of made it toxic to a body. But usually, as I said before, the chloroform doesn't generally kill people. So whether it's because these metals were mixed in with it, I don't know. So their initial plan failed. However, unfortunately, their next one did not. The couple left work, as you well know, separately. They met up again close by, where she unpacked her luggage from her car and willingly jumped into Roger's Audi. Leaving her car parked on a quiet side street, Roger and Sameena drove off together towards Leicester. It was believed that Sameena thought that this was going to be kind of a quick pre-Christmas stop-off. They were just going to nip up there, have a few drinks, and then obviously go to the hotel. A quick detour on the way to Birmingham. It's believed that Sameena was attacked by David almost as soon as she entered the house. It can't have been very difficult for the two brothers, who were, I believe, 6'5" and 6'7", to overpower a small 5'2" woman. These men towered over her and she was really unprepared. She didn't expect it. It was a total surprise for her. She was then smothered by the chloroform and then that was it. She was gone. They then obviously did their alibi, moved the car and buried the body. What remained a mystery was why David was so willing to partake in this and murder a woman that he didn't even know, like, at all. Of course, Roger had a motive. Sameena was threatening him to expose the relationship, and that was his motive, but David didn't. He must have been a very twisted man. Was he so dedicated to his brother that he would literally kill for him? Or was there just some other reason behind it? Who knows? Both Roger and David Cooper were sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder of Sameena Imam. This case was very strange and really sad. Poor Sameena loved Roger and he murdered her callously in cold blood because she was threatening to expose him, I guess. My heart goes out to the people involved in this case, her family. Of course, losing a loved one around Christmas time when it's supposed to be joyful and happy and it's supposed to be filled with family love is just awful and devastating. And Christmas time would always be kind of a reminder of that sadness. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you guys have any more suggestions, please let me know. I'll look into them for you. I truly hope that you guys have an enjoyable run up to Christmas and you all stay safe. If you've enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like similar content. But anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Sameena Imam. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye. And Princess says goodbye too.